What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast with Joey Mailari. So this evening, I'll be breaking down what happened in the NCAA Baseball Tournament, since I really haven't talked too much about what's been going on in that in the last 3 or 4 episodes. I said I was going to, never got to it, unfortunately. So I'm going to tell you what happened in the College Baseball World Series, with Ole Miss winning the school's first College Baseball World Series title in the program history, which is awesome. And then I'll stay on the topic of baseball and move on to the Red Sox and update you on how they've been playing as of late. And then I'll move on to the biggest storylines across baseball, including what's been going on with the LA Angels. I'll be talking about Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, how well they've been playing as of late, but the Angels don't have too much to show for it. And then also I'll be talking about what's been going on with the Baltimore Orioles. They've been playing great as of late, turning the season around, even if they're not, a playoff contender still. I think they're 5 games out of 500 right now, or 6 games out of 500. They've really turned the season around and shown a lot of progress, so I'm happy for them. And then after that, I'm going to talk about some key headlines within the NBA over the last day or so, including this morning, Brian Windhorst put out a report saying that the Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant situation is going to end up with both of those guys leaving Brooklyn. That's what the Brooklyn Nets were expected to think is going to happen. I guess now in the last hour or so, there's reports saying that Kyrie Irving is going to opt in to his final year of his contract with the Brooklyn Nets and fulfill his 4-year commitment to them. So I guess he ended up deciding he's going to stay in Brooklyn at the end of the day. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But I'm going to discuss the situation, break down some things that were happening over the last day or so with the reports going on in Brooklyn. But anyways, to start things off with the College Baseball World Series, Ole Miss won the school's first College World Series ever in the program history yesterday. I'll take a few minutes to break down each round and give some insight to what happened over the last month or so ago, since I really haven't had the opportunity to talk about what happened in each round. So I'll take a minute or two to talk about some key regional matchups, super regional matchups, then talk about what happened in the College Baseball World Series. So first off, to break down a few key regional matchups from the first round, Louisville had a huge 2-run home run from Cam Masterman at the bottom of the 8th inning in an elimination game versus Michigan. I really liked Louisville. I highlighted Cam Masterman and Louisville a ton during my college baseball special. The Cardinals actually scored 4 runs at the bottom of the 8th inning, down 9-7 to make it an 11-9 win over Michigan. They started very hot versus Michigan, scoring 7 runs in the first inning. Cam Masterman, one of my favorite players on the Louisville team, was 2 of 5 with 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored and a home run, his 19th of the season. And then Levi Usher was 4 for 5 with 4 RBIs and 2 runs scored. So Louisville, obviously, now with everything being over, it didn't really work out for them in the College Baseball World Series. I thought they had a really good chance of making it there. I think I had them, let's see, in my predictions here. I did have them in the College Baseball World Series. Obviously, it didn't work out for them, but I was rooting for them. Very good team, but tough break for them. Tough break for my 2 underdogs, too, in Dallas Baptist and Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State had 3 very close games in the Hattiesburg Regional, including a game 1 where they actually blew the game versus LSU. Kennesaw State was up 11-4 heading into the bottom of the 8th. They had an epic bullpen collapse surrendering 10 runs in that half of an inning to lose the game 14-11. But in that game, a positive was center fielder Josh Hatcher. He was 3 for 4 with a double and RBI and 4 runs scored. I talked about him in my college baseball special. Very good player, fun to watch. Then they ended up going on to play the 1 seed in Southern Mississippi, the number 11 overall seed in the tournament, and lost that in a very close game once again, 4-3 in extra innings. They actually held a 3-2 lead going into the bottom of the 9th inning, but things just didn't work out. Another team I want to talk about is UConn. UConn won the College Park Regional. They defeated Maryland 2 of 3 times, even beat Stanford in Game 1 of the Stanford Super Regional. They actually lost Game 2, unfortunately, and then lost Game 3 as well against Stanford. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But anyways, just making it to the college baseball tournament is something that's an honor on its own. So especially winning a regional. So congrats to UConn. I'm going to talk in a minute about them a little more. But anyways, Vanderbilt, I had them winning the Corvallis Regional. They were right there, honestly. They defeated Oregon State in the first game of the finals for the Corvallis Regional, won the game 8-1. But since it's a double elimination tournament, Vanderbilt had to win another game versus Oregon State. They just couldn't get that done for them. The Commodores ended up losing, but they made a great fight like I knew they would, and at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. Another team that I liked was Central Michigan. I figured they weren't going to win. I had Oklahoma winning that regional anyways, which ended up happening, but they fell short, as I said. They fought really hard, though, like I predicted they would. They lost to Florida in Game 1, 7-3. Beat Liberty 3-2 in an elimination game, and then lost a very close one yet again to Florida 6-5. Oklahoma ended up winning that regional and beating Florida in the finals, like I predicted. And then the Coral Gables regional, Ole Miss defeated Arizona in the finals by a score of 22-6. They were 3-0 in the Coral Gables regional and outscored their opponents in that regional 31-11. So it was absolute dominance by the Ole Miss team, who ended up going on to win the College Baseball World Series. In their 22-6 rout of Arizona, Ole Miss first baseman Tim Elko, who I'm going to talk about a ton, was 4-for-4 with 5 RBI, 6 runs scored, 2 base on balls, and then also was on base 6 out of 6 times with 3 home runs as well. So he had quite the game for them. And then Rebels second baseman Peyton Chatagnier was unreal too, 4-for-6 with 6 RBIs, 2 runs scored, and a home run as well. So Chatagnier and Tim Elko were both great for that Ole Miss team in their Coral Gables regional final. And I'm going to talk about them a ton since they both had 2 huge tournaments to help Ole Miss win their program's first College Baseball World Series title. Anyways, now I'm going to sum up some of the super regional matchups and what went down in those. Oklahoma defeated Virginia Tech, who's number 4 in the country, in the Blacksburg Super Regional. Oklahoma split the first 2 with Virginia Tech and ended up winning Game 3 in a blowout, an 11-2 victory for Oklahoma. Tanner Treadaway, who I highlighted in my college baseball special a month ago now, had a monster game against Virginia Tech in the Super Regional, going 4-for-5 with 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, 3 runs scored, and 2 doubles, 12 total bases all in all in those 4 hits. So that's an unreal game for him. He ended up playing a major role in Oklahoma's run to the College Baseball World Series Finals, so I'm going to talk about him a ton in this episode as well. And then in Game 3, Oklahoma's pitching shut out Virginia Tech, allowing only 2 hits, one of them being a 2-run home run to Hokies third baseman Costin DiMartini. Oklahoma's pitching did strike out 14 Hokies batters, so they were very dominant on the mound besides that 1 home run allowed. The next Super Regional I want to talk about was Tennessee losing to Notre Dame in the Knoxville Super Regional, which was such a surprise to most, especially to me, to see the Vols go down, especially so early. I'd say 90% of people probably had Tennessee winning it all because of how stacked of a team they had and how dominant their pitching and offense both were all year, but things just didn't work out for them. Notre Dame first baseman Carter Putz hit a home run in Game 1. He was 2-for-4 with 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored to start the scoring for Notre Dame. And then in Game 3, he went 2-for-4 with 2 runs scored, 2 RBIs, and 2 doubles. So he was a tough out for that Tennessee team. He ended up being a big reason Notre Dame won that super regional matchup. Notre Dame won Game 3 by a score of 7-3. They were outscored by the Vols 21-19 in the 3 games combined, but that's because Tennessee won Game 2 in a blowout by the score of 12-4. But in Game 3, Notre Dame had a huge 7th and 8th inning, scoring 3 runs in both of them to pull away after trailing 3-1 after 6 innings. Freshman left-handed pitcher Jack Finley was elite in relief for the Irish, going 5 innings pitched out of the pen with only 1 hit allowed, 2 base on balls, 4 strikeouts, and 0 runs allowed. Then you look at Tennessee. They had a freshman pitcher as well, Chase Burns, who I highlighted before as well in my college baseball special. He had a 3.4 ERA in the regular season. He got hit around, though, by the Irish in this game. Went 6 2/3 innings, allowing 5 hits, surrendering 4 runs. Did walk a batter and also had 5 strikeouts. Still lowered his season ERA, though, to 2.91 in the NCAA tournament. So a great year for him, especially considering he's only a freshman. Jordan Beck and Drew Gilbert, who I talked about in my college baseball special, are projected first-round picks as outfielders on that Tennessee team. They struggled heavily in Game 3 versus Notre Dame. Gilbert was 0-4, and then Beck was 0-1 with a strikeout and 2 walks. So not the best game for those 2 guys. Anyway, so UConn, like I said, I'll talk about them. They faced off with Stanford in the Stanford Super Regional. Stanford won it all actually in 3 games. It was 1-1 after 2, and then Stanford ended up winning in Game 3. UConn took Game 1, nearly a football score, 13-12. They won. UConn scored 8 runs in the second inning of Game 1. They were up 9-4 after 2 innings. They were up 13-6 going to the bottom of the ninth. They nearly choked the game away. They ended up surrendering 6 runs in the bottom of the ninth, but held on to win 13-12. There were 31 combined hits between the two teams, so there was a lot of offense in this game, as you could tell by the score, 13-12. Stanford center fielder Brock Jones hit 3 home runs in the game, going 3 for 5 with 5 runs batted in, 3 runs scored. His other 2 at-bats are strikeouts, but still an under game for him, so he's either a strikeout or home run in this game, which is nuts. Then Stanford third baseman Drew Bowser went 2 for 5 with 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. Then you look at Braden Montgomery, who I highlighted in my college baseball special as well. He hit home run also for the Vols. He's an outfielder and a right-handed pitcher, so I talked about him since it's interesting. He's a two-way player. And then you look at UConn. They hit 2 home runs of their own. Even though it didn't work out for UConn, I think it's very cool to see them play on the biggest stage in college baseball, since I saw them play at Northeastern this year at Freeman Diamond. And then Northeastern actually ended up beating them as well in early May at UConn. So it's cool to see them play in person, and then obviously see them play on TV in battle against Stanford. So in Game 3, it was a winner-take-all. And UConn scored 3 runs in the first inning. Stanford scored 2. Stanford stud catcher Cody Huff, who I talked about as well before, hit his 14th home run of the year. He went 3 for 4 in the game with 5 RBIs. Then Tommy Trout of Stanford was 4 for 5 with an RBI and 2 runs scored. UConn did allow a 6-run 4th inning for Stanford, and that made it too much for them to come back from. UConn hit around Stanford starter Joey Dixon the first inning. He didn't even actually record an out before being taken out of the game. Ben Huber was 1 for 2 with 3 RBIs and 2 walks for the Huskies. Quite the year for them. And even though they ended up losing, they gave Stanford a ton of problems and a run for their money. And Stanford's the number 2 overall seed, best team, remaining after the Vols went down. So great run for them. Very impressed with how much trouble they gave that Stanford team. So congrats to UConn, a great season. And then Texas A&M. They ended up defeating Louisville in the College Station Super Regional, winning both games by only 1 run. And as I talked about before, I was a Louisville baseball fan going into this tournament. I thought they had a really good chance of winning it, but they ended up losing 5-4 and 4-3 in both of their games against Texas A&M. In Game 1, it was a tough one, losing 5-4. And then in Game 2, they actually had a lead. They're up 3-2 after 5 innings in an elimination game, and they ended up giving up a run in both the 6th and 7th innings to Texas A&M. And then Texas A&M's bullpen really closed the door on Louisville. The bullpen combined for 4.1 innings pitched, allowing 5 hits but no runs, only 1 walk and 5 strikeouts. So even though Louisville's offense was honestly great for the whole game, like hits-wise, they out-hit Texas A&M 13-5. They still lost the game, and that's just how baseball goes. Sometimes you lose the game, even though you can out-hit a team 13-5. That's just how the ball rolls, and if you're getting hits in clutch situations, it's all situational hitting at the end of the day. So now that takes me to the last Super Regional matchup that I'm going to talk about, and that's Southern Miss and Ole Miss in the Hattiesburg Super Regional. Ole Miss defeated them in both games by a combined score of 15-0. Ole Miss went on quite the run in the NCAA tournament. I don't think anyone's surprised with them defeating Miami in the Coral Gables Regional. And then you look at it, they also defeat Southern Miss, another 1 seed in the Southern Miss Regional hosted in Hattiesburg. Ole Miss had quite a 6th inning in Game 1 versus Southern Miss, scoring 7 runs. Tim Elko was 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs, a run scored, and a double. Then you look at Dylan DeLucia, who I'm going to talk about a few times in this episode since he's pitched so well for this Ole Miss team the whole year. He shut down Southern Miss, who is number 11 overall in the country, a 1 seed, obviously. He went 5 2/3 innings, allowing no runs on 4 hits, 2 walks, and 9 strikeouts. Then you look at Jack Doherty, who came out of the pen for 3.1 innings in relief of DeLucia, and he allowed no hits, no walks, no runs, and had a strikeout. So 3.1 innings pitched, and he didn't even allow a base runner. So it just shows how much that Ole Miss team is locked in. Then you look at Southern Missouri's best player, Dustin Dickerson. He was only 1 for 4, and he was only one of the 4 hits Southern Miss had. So their offense was really shut down. Then you look at game 2. For Ole Miss, Justin Bench was 3 for 5 with an RBI and a run scored. And once again, the story of this game was Ole Miss's pitching. Hunter Elliott was on the mound in this game for the Rebels, and he was absolutely filthy, shutting down the Southern Miss Golden Eagles offense. He went 7 1/3 innings on the mound, allowing just 3 hits, striking out 10 batters, allowing no runs, and allowing no walks as well. So the most impressive part of his stat line, I would say, is the 10 strikeouts and no runs allowed, and also no walks, too. He was very accurate. Then Josh Mallitz came in relief of Elliott, and he shut the door on Southern Miss. He went 1.1 2/3 innings, allowing no runs, no hits, walking 1 batter, and striking out 1. And Southern Miss only had 4 base runners the whole game, so it just shows how much Ole Miss's pitching staff was locked in for the entirety of the NCAA tournament. Anyways, this brings me to the College World Series. Texas A&M, Texas, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma were in bracket 1. Oklahoma ended up winning that. And then in bracket 2, it was Stanford, Auburn, Arkansas, and Ole Miss. I actually had 3 or 4 of those in the College World Series. So to break down what happened in bracket 1, anyways, what I should actually preface, the College World Series is usually 8 teams, 2 brackets, 4 and 4. And then they play each other. Whoever wins bracket 1 plays bracket 2 in the finals, in the best 2 of 3. It's double elimination as well, so you have to lose twice. I just want to preface with that for people that don't know too much about the College World Series. Anyways, in bracket 1, Oklahoma was unreal, defeating Texas A&M, who was the number 5 overall team in the country. Then they also took on Notre Dame, who just beat Tennessee. In the previous round, beat them and then beat Texas A&M again. So credit to Oklahoma, even though they ended up losing in the finals, they went on a run. In Game 1 versus Texas A&M, in that first side of the bracket, Oklahoma won 13-8. They scored 7 runs in the second inning. They're up 8-3 after 2 innings. Texas A&M starter Nathaniel Detmer was lit up, only went 1 2/3 innings, giving up 7 runs on 4 hits, 3 walks, and a strikeout. On the mound for Oklahoma was Jake Bennett. He was a little bit better on the mound. He went 6 innings, allowing 4 runs on 5 hits, no walks, and 3 strikeouts. The main storyline of that game was Oklahoma stud center fielder Tanner Treadaway. He was 3 for 6 in the game with 2 runs scored and an RBI. And then Jimmy Crooks, the Oklahoma catcher, hit a 3-run home run, his 8th of the season. He was 1 for 4 in that game with 3 RBIs. Texas A&M didn't get much going on offense besides the center fielder, Jordan Thompson's 3-run home run. That was really all they had. And then in Game 2, Texas A&M, Oklahoma went out to face Notre Dame. They ended up winning that 6-2. Peyton Graham and Tanner Treadaway were dominant again for that Oklahoma offense. Graham was 4 for 4 with a run scored and a walk as well, so he was 5 for 5 on base. Then Treadaway was 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs scored. And then Soonest Starter, who I want to talk about a little, which I'm going to talk about a few times because he pitched a good amount for Oklahoma in this tournament. He went 6 innings, allowing only 2 runs, walking 1 while striking out 11 guys. So he had a dominant performance. Notre Dame first baseman Carter Putz, who I talked about for him playing well against Tennessee. He went 4 for 4. So even though it didn't end up working out for Notre Dame fans can't be upset with him. He also scored a run as well, so he had a tremendous game. And then in Game 3 that Oklahoma played in bracket 1, they ended up scoring 3 runs in the first inning versus Texas A&M. Soonest catcher Jimmy Crooks had another huge hit. He had a huge home run, finished the game 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. So another 3-run home run for him. This time it was in the first inning. And then Peyton Graham, who I mentioned as well, he went 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored and a double. And then on the mound for the Sooners was David Sandlin, who was dominant. He went 7 innings, allowing only 1 run on 5 hits, 1 walk, and 12 strikeouts. Then you look at Texas A&M. Their freshman lefty pitcher, Ryan Prager, went only 2 1/3 innings, allowing 4 hits, 3 runs, walking 1 batter, and striking out 3. So even though it didn't end up working out to Texas A&M, they had a great run and a great season, being the number 5 overall seed in the tournament as well. It just shows how good they were. And their backs were against the wall once. They were in an elimination game against Texas, defeated them. So I guess beating them, an in-state team, especially a powerhouse like Texas, is always good. So even though things didn't work out, they can't be too disappointed with how well they played. Anyways, in bracket 2, as I said before, Stanford, Auburn, Arkansas, Ole Miss. Ole Miss won this side of the bracket. Ole Miss played Auburn in their first game. Ole Miss won 5-1. Ole Miss started hot with 2 runs in the first inning. Left fielder Kevin Graham was 3 for 5 with a home run and RBI. 2 runs scored and a double. Rebel starting pitcher Dylan DeLucia, who had talked about before, he went 7 2/3 innings, only 1 run and 4 hits, and striking out 10. So his dominance continued. Ole Miss's pitching as a whole only held Auburn to 4 hits. So Auburn just couldn't get things going. Then you look at Auburn's starting pitcher, Joseph Gonzalez. He was hit around by the Rebels, allowing 4 runs in 5 innings pitched, 7 hits, with 7 strikeouts too. So he didn't have too bad of a game strikeouts-wise. In the next game, Ole Miss defeated Arkansas 13-5. Hunter Elliott got the start for Ole Miss, went 6 1/3 innings, allowing 3 runs, just 1 earned, while walking 2 batters and striking out 4. Ole Miss scored 2 runs actually in the first inning. And what was prevalent from the whole tournament as a whole was that Ole Miss always gets out to a hot start. They typically always score in the first inning. And getting out to a hot start is the way to get things going, especially with how good of a run they had. With their offense scoring so many runs early in the game, I mean, you could put teams away. Anyways, Ole Miss's center fielder, Justin Bench, was 4 of 6 in this game with 4 runs, scored a double and 2 RBIs. And then first baseman Tim Elko hit his 23rd home run of the season. For Arkansas, their starting pitcher, Zach Morris, only lasted 2/3 of an inning, only could get 2 outs, allowing 2 hits and also walking 2 batters. So not the best day for him. But Arkansas was a tough out, even though obviously they ended up losing. They were very tough out on this side of the College World Series bracket. In the first game of the College World Series for Arkansas, they defeated Stanford, who was the number 2 overall seed in the whole tournament. It was a 1-1 game after 4 innings. And then they ended up outscoring Stanford 16-1 in the last 5 innings of that game and won the game 17-2. They out-hit Stanford 21-7. So their offense was very hot. Everyone in that Arkansas starting lineup had at least 2 hits in that game, which is very impressive. Razorbacks third baseman Caden Wallace was 3 for 6 with the home run, 3 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. Then Connor Noland, who I'm going to talk about in a second as well, was superb on the mound for Arkansas with 7 2/3 innings, allowing only 2 runs on 6 hits, walking 1, and striking out 1. So after losing this game, Stanford ended up going on to face Auburn and lost the elimination game. So they were out without winning even a game in the College World Series. Anyways, so Arkansas ended up facing Ole Miss again. Ole Miss lost 3-2, but since it was double elimination, as I said, Ole Miss defeated Arkansas in the final game of bracket 2. They won that game 2-0. In game 2 versus Arkansas, when Ole Miss lost 3-2, Ole Miss's offense was silenced, only had 5 hits, and struck out 13 times. So credit to Arkansas on the mound. Arkansas lefty Hagen Smith surrendered only 1 run through 5 innings pitched. He did walk 4 batters, but struck out 8. He was a big reason Arkansas won that game. And then you look at in Game 3, the third matchup, Ole Miss bounced back and defeated Arkansas 2-0. Very good college baseball game, fun one to watch. Dylan DeLucia was stellar on the mound for Ole Miss with the season on the line. He went the distance, all 9 innings on the mound, allowing just 4 hits, walking none, striking out 7, allowing no runs, and also throwing 113 pitches after just pitching in the last game as well, or a game or 2 before that. And then Connor Noland was back on the mound for Arkansas again as well. He pitched very well too. Went 8 innings, allowing just 2 runs on 7 hits, striking out 7 and walking none. Arkansas only had 4 hits as a team, so Ole Miss's pitching staff really did calm down that offense. And then Ole Miss star Kevin Graham was 2 for 4 with an RBI double, a huge RBI double that ended up helping them win that game. Anyways, so in the finals, ended up being Oklahoma versus Ole Miss. In Game 1, Ole Miss dominated, winning by a score of 10-3. Jake Bennett was on the mound for Oklahoma. He went 6 1/3 innings, allowing only 3 runs and 7 hits, walking none and striking out 10. On the other side for Ole Miss was Jake Doherty on the mound. He gave up 2 runs in 5 innings of work, striking out 6 and only walking 1. Ole Miss first baseman Tim Elko was the star of the game. For the Rebels, he was 4 for 5 at the plate with 3 runs scored, a home run, and an RBI. And then second baseman Peyton Chatagnier was 3 for 5 with an RBI as well. Things really got going for Ole Miss in the first inning. As I said, they get hot. They scored 2 runs in the first inning. They always start hot. And then 1 in the second and 1 in the third. And didn't look back. Actually had 16 hits in the game. So it just shows how much their offense really gets going early in games and then just continues through on the end of the game. And then you look at game 2. Ole Miss trailed 2-1 after 7 innings, but scored 3 runs in the bottom of the 8th to take the lead 4-2. And then they closed it out in the 9th inning. Cade Horton was excellent on the mound for Oklahoma despite losing the game. He went 7 in the third innings, allowing 2 runs while striking out 13 batters. The most impressive part of his stat line is the 13 strikeouts with no walks, too. I guess that's even more impressive. 13 strikeouts to no walks and allowing 4 hits. So he did allow 2 runs, struck out 13, no walks, 4 hits allowed. In 7 and third innings, he had 107 pitches. Jacob Gonzalez hit a huge solo home run in the 6th to give Ole Miss a 1-0 lead. The Ole Miss shortstop was 3 for 4 in the game with 2 RBIs and 2 runs scored. On the mound for this game was Hunter Elliott for Ole Miss. He went 6 2/3 innings on the bump, allowing 3 hits, 2 runs, walking only 2, and striking out 6. He had a 2.7 ERA on the season, which is elite. Then Ole Miss's bullpen really closed the door. They went 2 1/3 innings of work, walking 2 batters, allowing no hits, no runs, and striking out 5. So they struck out 5 of 7 batters faced, which really closed the door and shut things down for that team. Overall, Ole Miss finished 10-1 in the NCAA tournament. Their only loss came to Arkansas. They ended up beating Arkansas, as I said, that elimination game of that bracket 2 final matchup. It was a really fun tournament to watch and follow along with. Obviously, I didn't get to highlight things as things went along, round by round, but I'm happy I could give you guys a quick summary now. And I hope you enjoyed following along and hearing about Ole Miss's historic run. Now I'm going to stay on the topic of baseball and talk about the Red Sox. Chris Sale just pitched an inning in a Florida Complex League game last week. He struck out Tampa Bay Rays stud shortstop Wander Franco. He went 1 inning, striking out 1, did allow a run, and walked a guy. The guy ended up stealing second base and then ended up scoring that following at bat. And then he pitched again a couple days ago in the FCL once again. He surrendered 3 hits, no walks, in 2 2/3 innings of work, 2 2/3 scoreless innings, while also striking out 6. His fastball hit 97 miles per hour, so I think he's going to be a huge addition to the Sox team since he only really hit 90, 92 last year, maybe, in his return back from the Tommy John surgery. Now he's at 97, so he's in A1 shape right now, and the Red Sox really need that. And then also factor in the Sox are going to get back James Paxton, too, from his injury. So both of those guys could be huge additions to the pitching staff. They could potentially move Garrett Whitlock back to the bullpen as closer and maybe have Houck as a setup guy or in the rotation since he's been acting as a closer in the last couple of weeks. Whitlock as a reliever this year, which I'm going to break down him as a reliever versus him as a starter. I crunched a few of these stats together online. Whitlock as a reliever this year, 9 2/3 innings pitched, allowing only 1 run on 4 hits, striking out 11 and walking 2. He had a .93 ERA with a 121 opponent batting average and has thrown 71% strikes when playing as a reliever. Then you look at Whitlock as a starter. When Whitlock pitches as a starter, 39 innings of work, with a 4.15 ERA compared to a .93 ERA as a reliever. Opponents have a 261 batting average against him as a starter versus a 121 batting average when he's relieving. He's allowed 18 runs on 40 hits with 38 strikeouts and 9 walks. So he's allowed 40 hits and 39 innings pitched compared to 4 hits allowed and 9.2 innings pitched when he's relieving. He's thrown 66% strikes as a starting pitcher. But I think if you look at it, I think he's more valuable on this team as a reliever, and they need him as a closer. The Sox right now are tied for 3rd in the MLB in blown saves with 14, so I think Whitlock is a lot more valuable as the closer. And who knows, maybe he'll be back to that once Chris Sale and James Paxton are back in the rotation, and once Whitlock's healthy as well since he's been hurt. And although Houck has been elite as of late out of the bullpen, serving as a closer for the last few weeks, I do think Whitlock would be better as the 9th inning guy. And maybe Houck goes back to the rotation or as a setup guy in the 8th inning. But a few things I want to highlight. One thing I found when looking at all these stats was that Houck, in his last 13 appearances out of the bullpen, he has a .92 ERA and 19.2 innings pitched. With 23 strikeouts in those 19 2/3 innings, allowing 18 hits, 4 walks, and only allowing 2 runs 2 runs in those 19.2 innings pitched, with a 64% strike rate. So he's been pitching very well in his last 13 games. He's 2-0 over that stretch with 6 saves and a hold. So he's filling in very well in Whitlock's absence in the bullpen, since Whitlock became a starter and now Whitlock's also hurt. So Houck has turned in to a great closer in his last 13 games, as I said, with a .92 ERA. So under 1 ERA with only 4 walks in 19.2 innings, 23 strikeouts, and has only allowed 2 runs. So Houck's been pitching very well. He's one of my favorite players on the Red Sox, so I'm very happy to see that. One last update with Chris Sale. He will be starting at the end of this week in AA for the Portland Sea Dogs. So I'll update you guys on how that relief appearance goes. But hopefully he's back, they're saying, by around July 15th. So a couple of weeks or 2.5 weeks, Chris Sale should be back in a Red Sox uniform. Anyways, Jeter Downs made his MLB debut last week as a third baseman when Rafael Devers got the night off. He played second base and shortstop in the minors for the most part. He's only played second and shortstop his whole life. He's only last played third base in high school, but he made his MLB debut at third base. And one thing about Downs, I think his glove is ready for the MLB. That's what a lot of scouts and people and analysts that watch the game and watch the minor league games heavily say. Just his bat isn't ready for the major leagues yet. In 2 seasons with the Worcester Red Sox, the Woo Sox in AAA, he's hitting 187. His power numbers are there, though. He has 11 home runs in 56 games for the Woo Sox this year, and in 99 games last year at 14 home runs. He also has 12 stolen bases, so he has speed. Could definitely add versatility in the playoffs with the September call-ups. I'm sure he could be a guy off the bench stealing bases in key situations. You look at Dave Roberts in 2004. He was a guy that came off the bench, obviously, and had a huge stolen base. Ended up turning that 2004 season around when he ended up stealing second base and ended up scoring. And then you look at the Red Sox in 2013. Quinton Berry stole a couple bases for the Red Sox in key situations. So I think Downs will be back up as a Red Sox at some point. One thing I want to highlight is the Yellow City Connect jerseys. When wearing them this season, the Red Sox are 11-2, or 5-0 this season, but 11-2 dating back to last season. So hopefully they wear those a little more since we're winning games. 11-2 record since wearing those dating back to last season, which I found to be a very interesting statistic. Next, I want to talk about Rob Refsnyder. In 10 games this year, which he's been really, not used too much. I'd use him a lot more. I think he should be in the lineup every day with how well he's been playing. In 10 games of work this year, he's hitting .414 with a 1.141 OPS. He's hit a home run, also 6 RBIs, and has only struck out 4 times in 35 plate appearances. He gets on base a ton and makes contact. And I think he should get more playing time. I know Jarren Duran, obviously, probably be the leadoff guy, even when Kike Hernandez comes back, since he's been playing so well. But I think Refsnyder should have an everyday spot in this lineup with how well he's been hitting the ball. Maybe he's in right field. I love Jackie Bradley Jr., but Jackie Bradley hasn't been hitting well. He's on 0 for 17 streak over his last 17 at bats, or an 0 for 18 streak. So I think Refsnyder is more valuable out there in right field. In June, the Red Sox hold an 18-4 record with an .818 win percentage. They've scored 108 runs in June and have only allowed 64. So that's a great differential there, 44-run differential. And then you look at the Red Sox, now we're second in the AL East for the first time since April 18th. Since May 18th, the Red Sox are 27-9. And since Alex Cora shaved his beard, which was in May, the Red Sox hold a 32-12 record. So they've been a dominant baseball team since he shaved his beard and changed the luck of this baseball club. Cora recently said that he sees Trevor Story as the best second baseman in baseball, which I think is a very good second baseman. He's obviously getting paid a ton, to play second base, $20 million a year. But if you look at his numbers, aren't all that great. I do love Story. I'm a big fan of him. He's hit .227 on the year with 11 home runs, 50 RBIs. So his power numbers and his runs batted in are there, very well. He's played very well in those two categories. He's got 10 stolen bases in 10 attempts, so he's 10-10 stealing with a 719 OPS, scored 40 runs, has a 98 OPS plus. But I think the best second baseman in baseball, if you ask me, it's Jazz Chisholm of the Miami Marlins. I think he's the best second baseman in the game by far. He definitely has the most swag by far. I don't think that's a competition. I don't know any other player that carries themselves the way Jazz does. But Jazz on the year has hit .255, so he's a better average than Trevor Story. Has 14 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 45 RBIs, 39 runs scored with an .864 OPS, which is over 150 more OPS points almost than Trevor Story with 140 OPS plus. He also, if you look at all the statistics, I crunched a lot of these numbers and compared them. Among second basemen in baseball, he's number 2 with 15.14 at-bats per home run. He's got 14 home runs, which is tied for first among second basemen with Jose Altuve. He's second in RBIs among second basemen in baseball, just behind Trevor Story. He's number 3 in OPS among second basemen with an 864 OPS. He's number 1 in slugging percentage among second base with a 538 slugging percentage. Then he's tied for second in the MLB as a whole, not just corresponding to what position, with 4 triples. So very good player. He's also 4th in all of Major League Baseball, 5 home runs when he's down in the count. So you should see his bat speed. Even when he's down in the count, let's say a 1-2 count, people try to get a curveball by him, people try to get fastballs by him. It just doesn't work sometimes. It's nuts how fast his bat speed is. And he can reach up in the upper right-hand part of the zone since he's a lefty. He can turn on fastballs in the upper right quadrant of the strike zone. As you've seen, he had a huge home run last year against Jacob deGrom. That was 100 miles an hour in the right part of the strike zone, top right, and he turned on it somehow and pulled it to right field, which is nuts. Anyway, speaking of hot hitters, the Red Sox have 3 of them right now: Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, and JD Martinez. They're all in the top 5 of batting average in the MLB. They're 3, 4, 5, actually, respectively. The Red Sox are number 1 in team batting average in baseball with a 261 batting average. They're hitting 309, which is second in Major League Baseball on balls in play. So if they make contact, the Red Sox typically are getting on base. And then following a loss this season, the Red Sox are 20-11 with a 2.99 ERA. So the pitch has been responding very well following a loss. The Sox have the best ERA in baseball over the last 30 games with a 2.83 team ERA. They have the number 1 ERA in June with a 2.37 ERA. And one interesting statistic that I found when researching was that the Padres spent $82 million on their pitching staff this year. The Phillies spent $80 million on the pitching staff this year, and the Yankees and Dodgers spent $70 million apiece. The Red Sox only spent $28 million on their pitching staff, which is the 10th lowest money spent on a pitching staff in the MLB this season. And they have the best ERA in baseball over the last 30 games, the best ERA in baseball in June. And I've been critical of Chaim Bloom, but he's found some great gems in Michael Wacha, who's 6-1 on the season with a 2.34 ERA, Nick Pivetta, who's 8-5 on the season with a 3.25 ERA, and then John Schreiber, who's been elite out of the bullpen with an under 1 ERA. Pivetta has been unreal as of late. With Eovaldi and Sale hurt, and Whitlock hurt as well, we needed Pivetta to step up, and he's been playing so well. In Pivetta's last 10 starts, he's 8-1 in 68 innings of work. He has 65 strikeouts with 16 walks, 14 runs allowed, 44 hits, with a 1.85 ERA and a 180 on base. An opponent batting average. So he's been pitching very well. He's been playing great. That's elite numbers right there over his last 10 games. As I said, 8-1 record with a 1.85 ERA. So if you look at it, the Red Sox only spent $28 million on their pitching staff in the MLB this year, which is 10th lowest in the major leagues. And they have the best ERA in the last 30 games, the best ERA in June. I'm very impressed with Chaim Bloom's work in finding some of those gems. I still think the Red Sox need 1 or 2 bullpen pieces, but I'm not going to criticize them for making deals, with Michael Wacha, Nick Pivetta, John Schreiber, just to name a few. All of those have worked out very well. So can't be mad at him there, but I do think they need one more guy in the bullpen, one more steady guy, since late in the games we've blown 14 saves this year. So we need one more piece back there that we can feel confident in. Another positive thing with the Red Sox is Alex Verdugo has been back to himself. He has his batting average back up to 251 on the year. In June, he's hitting 304 with an 816 OPS, 2 home runs with 15 RBIs, 15 runs scored. He has 6 doubles in 20 games, 6 RBIs in his last 6 games, and he's hitting 348 over that stretch. He's 24 of 79 over his last 20 games, which is more than a hit per game on average. So he's looking like he's back to himself, hitting 3 or 4 in his last 20 games. The Red Sox really need that. And the Sox are the best record in baseball in their last 10 games, 8-2. The Sox are actually tied with the Braves for the best record in baseball over the last 20 games, 16-4. They both are apiece. And now the Red Sox will play a 3-game series in Toronto and will not have Tanner Houck and Jarren Duran due to both of them not being vaccinated. All visiting players and guests in general need the vaccine to enter Canada, and neither one of those players have them. So that's a big loss for the Red Sox, considering Houck's been so great out of the pen, and Jarren Duran's been elite at the leadoff spot over the last 10 games or so. This past weekend, the Sox swept the Cleveland Guardians, who are number 1 in the AL Central, heading into the weekend series on Friday. The Sox have won 7 straight series now and have the third best record in the American League, behind the New York Yankees and Houston Astros. And speaking of those two teams, the Yankees were no-hit on Saturday by Houston. They were getting no-hit again yesterday through 6 innings, but of course they came back to win the game in a dramatic walk-off fashion with an Aaron Judge walk-off home run. But Houston's 3-pitcher combined no-hitter on Saturday was the third no-hitter of the MLB season. The Yankees have only been shut out 5 times this year, 3 times in April. Their last time before Saturday was May 22nd. And just being shut out is impressive for any pitcher to shut out the Yankees, but no hitting them is even crazier. And the Yankees were the fastest team to 50 wins in baseball since 2001, so they've been very hot all year. So shutting out the Yankees offense is impressive on its own, but no hitting them is even more impressive. The Orioles, speaking of hot, the Orioles are getting very hot as of late. They no longer a doormat to MLB teams. This team's on the rise, and I couldn't be happier to see it. They're 34 and 40 on the year. They took 3 or 4 from the Chicago White Sox. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They have the 3rd best record in baseball over their last 10. They've scored the 11th most runs in Major League Baseball over the last 15 games with 66 runs scored. They have a 3.5 team ERA in the last 15 games, which is good for 9th in the major leagues. They're 10th with 50 runs allowed over the last 15 games. They're tied for 13th in best record in baseball in the last 30 games, of 16-14 over the last 30. They're tied for 6th best record in baseball over the last 20 games, 12-8, which is great for a team with the lowest payroll in the major leagues. They only have a $45.5 million payroll. They have the same record over the last 20 games as the Mets, and 1 game better than the Dodgers. And for comparison, the league average payroll is $147.5 million. That's over $100 more million than the Baltimore Orioles have to spend this season. The Dodgers payroll is currently at $261 million. The Mets are at $260 million, and the Orioles have the same amount of wins over the last 20 games as the Mets, and have 1 more win over the last 20 games than the Dodgers. So that's very impressive. Cedric Mullins has been playing great as of late. He's $299. He has a $299 batting average over his last 16 games. He's up to $251 on the year. He's typically around a $300 batting average like Alex Verdugo. They both had slow starts to the year. Both are getting very hot now, so I'm happy to see that. Cedric Mullins only has 6 home runs so far this season, but the 2021 All-Star and Silver Slugger had 30 last season and had a $291 batting average, stole 30 bases as well in 2021. I'm sure he's going to get hot and hit more home runs later on in the season. He was part of the exclusive 30-30 home runs, 30 stolen base club. The last 2 to do it were Christian Yelich and Ronald Acuna Jr. in 2019. So very impressive season of him last year. I'm sure he's going to continue to rise this season with him getting hot and Alex Verdugo getting hot. One ridiculous stat I came across for the Yankees heading into yesterday's game against Houston was that they have the number 1 at-bats to home run ratio in the MLB, 20.23 at-bats per home run, which is nuts. They're also first in the major leagues with 118 home runs, so their power has just been ridiculous. Now I'm going to transition to the LA Angels. Heading into yesterday's game against Seattle, the LA Angels are 7-9 in their last 16 games since snapping their 14-game losing streak. In Shohei Ohtani's last 19 games, he has a .319 batting average with 5 home runs, 15 RBIs, 11 runs scored with a 1.004 OPS. Over that stretch, though, the Angels are only 7-12. So even though he's hitting, fantastic, and he's playing, the best baseball he's played all season, they're only 7-12. So not much to show for record-wise. Last Tuesday, Ohtani was 3 for 4 with two two-run home runs, including one at the bottom of the ninth inning when the Angels were down 3 runs with 1 out and 2 guys on base, tied the game with 1 swing of the bat. He finished that game with 8 RBIs. The Angels ended up still losing that game 12-11 in extra innings to the Kansas City Royals. And then last Wednesday, he was superb on the mound versus the Kansas City Royals. He went 8 innings scoreless with 13 strikeouts, 2 hits, did walk 1 batter, allowing no runs. He has a 2.9 ERA on the year. He's a 6-4 record on the mound with a 2.9 ERA, so he's pitching very well, especially as of late. As I said, he went 8 innings scoreless last Wednesday with 13 strikeouts, allowing no runs and only walking 1 batter and allowing just 2 hits. And then you look at last Tuesday, the day before that, he was 3 for 4 with two-run home runs and 8 RBIs. It's absolutely nuts what he can do, and he's the biggest bargain in all of baseball. He's only making $5.5 million this year. He is arbitration eligible this year for next season. For the 2023 season. He's the earliest he can be a free agent is after next season in 2024. So he's still going to be an LA Angel, I'd imagine, in 2023. But in 2024, he will be a free agent. The rumor is right now that he's going to get around a 4-year, $200 million contract with a $50 million per year average, which I think he deserves all of it, especially considering he can go from hitting two-run home runs with 8 RBIs and then the next day go 8 innings scoreless along with just 2 hits with 13 strikeouts. He's absolutely ridiculous and such a talent to watch on a nightly basis. And then Mike Trout, in his last 15 games after the 0 for 26 streak, which I know everyone was highlighting and talking about all over Twitter and ESPN, since snapping that streak, he is hitting .340 with 9 home runs, 17 RBIs, and a 1.379 OPS. He has a 105.70 OPS on the season, which is number 1 in all of Major League Baseball. So it's safe to say he is back. But since snapping that 0 for 26 streak, as I said, in his last 15 games, he's hitting .340 with 9 home runs, 17 RBIs, and a 1.379 OPS. The Angels only 5-10 over that 15-game span. So as you can see, it's not Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout's fault, and I think anyone can tell that, especially if you're a baseball fan, you're following and seeing their box scores on a nightly basis. They're typically the only guys that are contributing on that offense night in and night out. Lastly, going to transition to my last segment, a very quick segment, news within the NBA. It was reported in the last day or two that the Los Angeles Lakers were the only team pursuing Kyrie Irving in a sign and trade, but the Brooklyn Nets weren't interested in the Lakers package that they offered. Russell Westbrook was said to be offered in that deal. The Clippers, Sixers, and Heat, who were said to be interested before, are no longer interested in Kyrie Irving. And then I heard reports earlier today saying that Kyrie Irving could opt out of his deal with Brooklyn and then sign a $6 million mid-level contract with LA to reunite with LeBron James. But I just saw about an hour or so ago now that Kyrie Irving is going to be opting in to his $36 million option for this season to stay on net and fulfill his 4-year agreement with the team. So I guess Durant will be staying too, although there were reports early today from ESPN's Brian Windhorst that ESPN was told that the Brooklyn Nets are expecting Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant to no longer be Brooklyn Nets in over the next few months. But I guess Kyrie Irving is going to stay, which I'd imagine that means Durant's going to stay now as well. So I guess that's good for Brooklyn, especially considering that Houston owns Brooklyn's 2024 and 2026 first-round picks. And then there's 3 pick swaps in 2023, 2025, and 2027. So if the Brooklyn Nets were to break things up, they would never have the draft capital to get back on track since Houston has, 5 of their next 5 draft picks. So it's a good thing for them that he ends up staying. And I guess since Kyrie Irving opts in to the final year of his contract, he's not eligible for a sign-in trade. So I guess he is officially in Brooklyn for this next upcoming season, which means Kevin Durant will be staying as well. So I think things will be interesting in the East. I'm excited to see how things play out. The last thing I want to talk about Houston Rockets point guard John Wall, who I talked about an episode or 2 ago now, is expecting to be bought out by the Houston Rockets over the next day or 2. He could be potentially pursued by the LA Clippers, LA Lakers, and Miami Heat. I'm hoping the Clippers get a chance at him. I'd really like to see him in a Clippers uniform, especially considering they could use another point guard, especially a point guard to his caliber. He's a very good player. So hoping to see him in a Clippers uniform, but obviously the Lakers and Heat, I'm sure want him as well. I'm sure LeBron will be making a great pitch to him to try to get him in LA in a Lakers uniform rather than a Clippers uniform. Anyways, Thank you guys so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you guys so much. I should be back on again in the next day or so to talk about the NBA draft. Like I said, talk about what's going on in the NFL, and then also talk about the Stanley Cup Finals in Colorado beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. I'll talk about what happened in Game 6. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great night. Take it easy, stay safe, and stay well. Thank you.